and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham-Pars incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer, really, standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes, and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello, everyone. This is Martin Willis, your host. And we have a great show for you this evening. Alejandro Rojas is coming up in just a minute with the news. And after that, we have Leslie Kean and Jose Lay, and we are going to be talking UFOs and the Chile government, and it's going to be pretty interesting. We're going to be taking calls, and that's at 603-967-4030 for the live show. There's also a chat room at podcastufo.com. You're welcome to pose questions there. And I want to thank everyone for supporting the show. People who support the show for only $1 or more get to listen to the whole entire show, which is 2 hours long here. You can listen to the first hour free, as always, and you can listen live at the Dark Matter Radio Network, always for free. And I am going to draw a T-shirt next week, only because I'm not prepared for that. A winner for a T-shirt is coming up next week. And so we are going to roll right into the news with Alejandro Rojas. And what is going on, Alejandro?
Oh, my gosh. What's not going on is there's a lot going on, buddy.
Yes, always. And we are going to steer away from the UFO slide news. There's, the Roswell slide news. Then there's news.
Nothing going on. There's nothing. No.
Yeah.
I was aware that you wanted to avoid that, so I do have other stories.
Oh, that's good. You know, I corresponded a little bit with Kevin Randall today and congratulated him on a nice show on your podcast. Great interview. I suggest anyone shoot over to openminds.tv and listen to that podcast. And he did a great job, and I said it'll be really interesting in the future to look back at this and see, what has developed all through these tangled webs. Mm-hmm. That, because things are kind of crazy on the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. No? And listeners of your podcast, of course, will hear recognize a familiar voice at the beginning of that podcast where we reviewed the news. And, we've replaced Jason with you.
I know. I am totally honored by that. I really, I was so thrilled when you asked me if I'd be available to do that. And it's on my lunch break. I don't have the best mic, but it
sounded great, I think.
It worked, yeah.
And, I mean, Jason's going to be sorely missed, but it's sure going to be a lot of fun talking with you during the news every week.
Yeah, you probably got some hate mail from some of the Jason lovers, but I don't want to know about
hate mail thus far.
What's that?
That I've seen. There's no hate mail I've seen thus far, but I'm not one of those guys who goes into all the social media and reads every comment and everything. So There might be some out there, but if there is, I am blissfully ignorant of it.
Yes, please keep me blissfully ignorant. I don't want to know.
Yeah, it's a nice place to be.
Yeah. So what is going on for the news this week?
Yeah, so some interesting stuff. This is a story that actually has done very poorly on our site, but this is funny because it's been picked up by the news out there, and people probably read it. And this has to do with the PGA tournament, which actually was about a week ago, the Players' Championships, where there was a viewer who believes he caught a UFO, that he saw a UFO while he was watching this. He recorded it with his phone. So he recorded the TV that he was watching with his phone, and so that's all we have. And actually, Lee Spiegel of the Huffington Post found this in the MUFON archives, so he wrote a story about it. So it's in the video. you do see a bird fly by, you see the golf ball flying up in the air, and then you see another object in the air. And that's what this guy thought was pretty mysterious. And it does look, kind of dish-shaped. And he said, he couldn't figure out what it was. He knew it wasn't a blimp. He knew it wasn't this or that. So Lee wrote about it, and it got out there pretty well. Now, Mark D'Antonio, the photo analyst for MUFON, took a look at it. And here's why. Even though when I write about UFO stories, I'll often get a lot of hits in it, but I'll put what the skeptics or maybe an analyst had found, and people will still look at the story and they'll debate it. Whenever I put what the object possibly could have been in the title, people won't even read the story. It's kind of funny.
Really?
But,
wow.
Yeah. So I put UFO at PGA tournament might be a birdie with a Y. Of course, I know birdie in golf terms is IE. But that's because this thing is most likely a bird. I don't know if people have followed, I think even some of the stories you and I have talked about. A bird in flight, when its wings are kind of even with the camera and you can't see its wings above or below it, looks cylindrical. It looks cigar-shaped. It looks, elliptical. Really, with points at two ends. And that's what this looks like it is. In fact, I think in the video, late in the video, you can kind of see this bird kind of bank and fly off. So that's what Mark felt it was, and others disagree. Some, concede that it's a bird. But this is a story that got quite a bit of news.
Well, that will be in the video, and everything will be connected in the story.
Oh, yeah. We've got the video and everything in our story at openminds.tv.
Okay. And we'll have that link in our show notes. And I just want to know, Tiger Woods abducted or anything? Do you know?
No, Tiger Woods was not abducted, but these days he just is so uncomfortable and unhappy out there in the field. It seems like he's just not the Tiger Woods he used to be, unfortunately, and he probably wishes he were abducted.
Yeah. No, we don't need to go into that whole situation. Yeah. All right, so what else is going on?
All right, this is really cool, and the fun thing, here's the advantage that you have. Since you come and do the news with me on Monday, and then I come on, later in the week to talk to you, there's sometimes, of course, newer stories or further developments on stories we've had. So I do have a further development than what we talked about on my show to this next story, and that is we had a guest review of the Area 51 movie. And this was done by a guy named Theron Moore, and a really cool guy. He has a website where he talks about rock and roll and stuff like that, some hardcore kind of rock music. But what he did, he's into UFOs, and he's a big fan of ours. So he wrote this from a UFO person's perspective. Someone into UFOs. So he talks about how in this new Area 51, it's a found footage film made by the guys who made Paranormal Activity, which of course is huge. And everybody knows about these movies, Paranormal Activities. So this is kind of similar where these guys go in, sneak into Area 51, see aliens and all this stuff. So what's interesting is that there are pieces from actual research in the film. And there are a few UFO researchers. So Glenn Campbell, Norio Hayakawa, and George Knapp are in this film. What's funny is when I posted this review of the film, I tagged Norio and George Knapp. Norio was laughing because he's like, these guys, I talked to them for 10 minutes or they did some filming or something like that with me years ago. And I thought the movie wasn't even going to happen anymore. So he's like, I just found out about this myself. George Knapp, when I posted it, said, what? He seemed completely shocked. And just the other day, I think just yesterday, he posted about a paragraph on my Facebook to explain what he meant. I guess something like 3 or 4 years ago, they sat down and they had the main character interview him while they filmed the main character filming George Knapp, and they filmed that, so it was because it's a found footage thing. So he said that he had forgotten completely about it. He didn't think they were going to use it or the film was even going to get made because so many years had passed. And this was even before Paranormal Activity. So we saw, since his interview with them, they've become these big stars, and their movies became so huge. So he didn't know what was going on. So he only just found out that they used some of that footage they shot many, many years ago in the film. So kind of funny, kind of cool that you'll be able to see some UFO researchers in this movie. I haven't seen it yet, but I do want to see it for that reason alone. Otherwise, the reviews are mixed. There's lots of people saying Theron, the guy who wrote the story, liked the movie, and so we have some people saying that he's full of it and the movie was awful, but that's how it goes with movies. Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. Now, Paranormal Activity was released in 2009, so this should be going way back then. Yeah, he said it was a long time ago. Yeah, how about that? So, this is interesting, but also, keep in mind that I don't think anybody could sneak on Area 51. They have ground sensing, alarms and... Oh, that's something I forgot. Yeah. That in the interview, George Knapp did say he has an idea of how to sneak onto Area 51, but he told the filmmakers in that interview he wouldn't tell them what that idea is because he doesn't want anybody to try it, and then he'll get in trouble when they get caught or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. Doesn't seem easy. Yeah, I don't think so. I know... I'm trying to remember his name. He goes to a lot of UFO conferences, and I got to talk to him. I want to say Austin or something like that. Real fun guy. Anyway, he said he just jumped over the line and jumped back just to say he could do it, and then got in his car and drove off. That's funny because I did see a video just the other day, and it says crossing the line at Area 51. So I watched it, and it's these guys in their motorcycles. They go to the area where the sign is, and they're kind of hanging out there. Then one of them goes past the sign just a few feet, and then they all take off and they go as fast as they can and get out of there. So kind of funny. They weren't chased or anything, but of course there are many people who have crossed the line who have gotten in trouble and had to spend some time in jail for that. That's right. It was Chris Augustine. I don't know if you happen to know him. It sounds familiar, yeah. Yeah, great guy. Funny guy. So what else is going on for the news? The other one is this UFO inside of a building. So this is a U.S. Spacewalk of Fame museum. They caught on their security cameras twice in 1 week these orbs inside of their building. And, one of the videos, the most impressive, shows this orb coming off camera. It moves, and then it kind of turns around and comes back and then goes on screen for a little bit longer. The director of the museum says they have ghostly activity there, and he thinks they're mysterious. He says the guy that installed their security system doesn't know what it is. He said that their AC system was off, so he doesn't think it was something blowing around like dust or something like that. So he believes it to be a genuine mystery. So it's gotten a lot of talk and a lot of people looking at these interesting videos. I was wondering about that after I was on your show the other day, whether this place had any type of, air ventilating system, because that's, it sort of moved very quickly, almost like something would move into a gust of wind of some type and then move the other way quickly. But, by golly, it could just be an orb. You never know. It could. Who knows? And then, of course, because it's a space museum, people have said maybe it's an alien. But it's kind of more along the line of what the ghost hunters are kind of looking for. Yeah. But pretty interesting video. It's a fun video. This story's getting out there. So I definitely recommend people at least take a look and tell us what you think. Yeah. They're all excited because it's getting some press. They'll probably get more visitors and all that. Realistically, I think it's probably some type of dust particle. They just need to figure it out. And I'm sure if that's the case, though, they will see it again because they recently moved into this new building.
They haven't been in there that long. So
that's right. It's an old building, but they have not been in it that long. And they didn't get into detail, although maybe he's been interviewed again by now. This is in Titusville, Florida, by the way. But they do say there's been other, what he believes to be ghostly activity in this building.
That's right. And this week, a little later on, you're going to Contact in the Desert, and you're speaking, right?
That's right. Yeah, this weekend I will be at Contact in the Desert at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center. It's kind of near 29 Palms in California. So hopefully people will be there. I'll be speaking Saturday night and Sunday morning. Both of these I think will be fun. Like your regular ticket will get me into my Saturday night lecture. And that's going to be about really strange ET cases. Oh, man, and I would love for you in particular to see this talk sometime because I cover, of course, people will know Martin and I are on the skeptical end of the scale, I think, when it comes to UFOs. However, what I cover are abduction cases and alien contact cases that have made a real difference in how people think about this stuff and or mostly unknown or not very well known at all, but are very credible, like that happened a long time ago before this phenomena was even really known about. So they're really compelling cases and interesting and strange, and so they really, even for the hardened skeptic like us, make you scratch your head. So I think it's a really fun talk. And then I've done it at the local MUFON, and I developed it specifically for a crowd that's, more into kind of the fringe type of stuff. And then Sunday morning, I'm kind of being more tight-lipped about the topic, but it's about the absolute strangest abduction case I've ever been involved in. And I'm kind of just doing a workshop where it's like, here's what happened to me. What do you guys think? Am I being fooled? Is this a hoax? And if so, how can we account for some of these things that are really strange, including some of my personal experiences attached to this? Some people who know about my research and the more controversial stuff I've been attached to will probably be able to figure out which case I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, you got me wondering here, so I'm going to have to check that out sometime. Alejandro, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, twice. Talk to you next week twice. All right, everyone, hang in there. We'll be right back after the music break with Leslie Kean and Jose Lay. Okay, I want to apologize, first of all, to everyone. It seems like I've been doing that a few times. But this time, it was a microphone problem, and this show almost didn't happen by about 15 seconds, literally, no joke. We just got it cranking just before that. And luckily, we got it fixed. And so I have Leslie Kean and Jose Lay. They are on Google like a Google chat, which I've never used. That was another challenge. But can you hear me there? Leslie?
I hear you fine, Martin.
Hi.
Yes, I hear you.
I hear you also.
All right. So
how is the volume? How's this volume, Martin? Is it okay?
Everything seems to be fine on this end. They'll let us know in the chat room. Also, listeners, just to let you know, we're going to allow calls tonight. If you'd like to call in, that's 603 967-4030. Just quickly, Jose Lay, we've had him on a few different times. I got to meet him as well as Leslie down in North Carolina 2 or 3 years ago now it is. And Jose is the International Affairs Director of the CEFAA, that's Chile's official agency, I hope I pronounced that right, investigating UFOs. And, of course, Leslie Kean is a well-known journalist. You all know her. New York Times bestseller. Her great book, I think, is the book out there, Myself on UFOs. Generals, pilots, and government officials go on the record, and they will be the guests. And they're here right now. So glad to have them. And we're going to be talking today about a new story. Leslie, why don't you go into this story, as you just published this in the Huffington Post recently?
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for having us on, Martin. And I don't know how many listeners have read the story, but it is on the Huffington Post right now if anybody wants to log on while we're doing the show. And it's basically about a case from the CEFAA, which is Jose's agency, which is part of the Chilean government, investigated very, very thoroughly with the help of lots of different people, which he can tell you about. But just to give you an overview of the case, it took place in September of 2012, and it took place at the Air Force War Academy in Santiago, Chile, and we refer to it as the AGA case, AGA, because the AGA is the acronym, is the initials for the Air Force War Academy, which in Spanish is the Academia de Guerra Area. I don't know if I said it right, but anyway, so the AGA refers to the academy where it took place. And basically what happened was there were 3 witnesses to a sighting which involved 3 different formations. There was a sergeant involved at the academy and a paramedic and an emergency medical technician who we can refer to as the EMT. The paramedic and the EMT came to fill up their ambulance with gas at the academy because they have a pump there, and the sergeant was assisting them, and they saw these lights coming in over the Andes mountain, so which are very large mountains that you see everywhere in Santiago. It was nighttime. It was early in the night, about I believe it was around 7:45 p.m., so it was dark, and the lights basically came over the mountain, and at first they thought they were helicopters, but quickly realized, especially the sergeant who had been in the Air Force for 27 years and was very experienced at dealing with helicopters, realized quite soon that they were not helicopters. For one thing, they were completely silent, and the lights drew closer, and they witnessed them form, first of all, a horizontal line. There were 5 lights, then a triangle, and then a circle. And during this time, 2 of the paramedic and the EMT actually pulled out their cell phones and were filming them. The sergeant was kind of running around. He was very kind of frightened and responsible for the security of the base, so he was calling out for the guard in the guard post to come out, and he was just very alarmed by it. And they all described, eventually there was a lot of interviews, and I don't know how much you want me to go into actually what happened. That's actually the nature of the case, and then what happened was after it was over, it took a couple of minutes for them to witness these things. A general happened to come by the AGA, the Air Force Academy, shortly after the event. Within 5 minutes, he was just dropping something off, and he was able to interview the 3 witnesses and observe how absolutely shaken they were. He said that the sergeant was white. You know, they were really, really disturbed by what they had seen, particularly the sergeant, and he was able to report and file a written statement about that later on. But it was very important, the fact that there was this very credible person who came by so quickly. And then the director of the academy was called. He came over within 15 minutes. And so that's what happened the actual night of the event. So phase 2 is describing what happened during the investigation.
Well, we got plenty of time on the show here. So, Jose, when did this first get reported to you? When did you first hear about it?
First of all, good evening, Martin, and the audience, and Leslie. We learned about it the very next day, first time in the morning. Our work started at 8 a.m. here, and the director of the academy, he phoned our director, General Bermudez, exactly at 8 a.m. next day. And the investigation started immediately.
And the one thing for the listener that hasn't heard this before, this CEFAA, if I'm pronouncing that right, I know it's something like that, is an amazing government agency. And why don't you explain a little bit more about that? I know we've talked about it here a number of times, but, you know, we have new listeners coming in all the time. So if you wouldn't mind telling us what the government agency is and what type of support you have.
Well, the agency was created within the Air Force first, and due to the fact that especially DGAC was receiving many reports from pilots and air traffic controllers of unusual sightings being made very frequently, and especially one that was very spectacular, so to say, that happened back in 1997, in which a whole town practically was witness to the phenomenon, in order to channel all the information that was coming in. And for that, we were created with the faculty or the right to know immediately any sighting made by either commercial pilots or military pilots or ground crews that were in charge of radar or ground controllers, air traffic controllers. That was the beginning of the CEFAA. And from there on, we had to try to call into the committee as many scientists as possible. We already had the support of the DGAC because we were enclosed within the DGAC in order to be able to deal not only with the military pilots, but also with commercial liners that had been also reporting their unusual sightings. So it had to be a mixed committee to take charge of the investigation. We also needed the academic support of our scientists, and for that we made a call to all the universities here, and we were very lucky because the answer was very positive. Right now we have a large group of scientists, including a National Science Prize and 2 reputed astronomers, that each of them, by the way, has an asteroid named after their own names. And the committee right now consists of a mixture of scientists, Air Force people, DGAC specialists, engineers, and so on and so forth, and the whole structure of the ground control in Chile is also available to us in the sense of radar and ground controllers, air traffic controllers. So basically, that is the structure of the CEFAA. And in order to be able to communicate with the different branches of the armed forces, each of the branches has detached a representative in order to receive whatever happened within their own specialties to refer it to us and the CEFAA. So everything is centralized. Whatever happens in our office, that is in resume what we are.
And I think it's an absolute wonderful example, and hopefully other countries will follow. Leslie, you have really advocated for this to happen, other countries to follow in the footsteps, basically, of Chile. Can you talk a little bit about that? Have you made any progress by exposing what they do to other countries?
Well, I want to answer that. I just want to clarify one thing first. When Jose was referring to the DGAC, probably people don't know what that is. And the DGAC is the Department of Civil Aeronautics in Chile, just to give people that clarity, which is underneath the purview of the Air Force, so it's within the Air Force. It's kind of like our FAA. So the CEFAA is basically a department within the equivalent of the FAA here. So to answer your question about, I definitely have been, one of the reasons I feel that it's so important to make the work of the CEFAA known is because I do feel that they are such a good example for the world in terms of how an agency can operate very efficiently and get a lot of work done and do great investigations with all the resources available to them without it costing a lot. And it's just, they do it beautifully and seamlessly there. And so I have, the work that I do behind the scenes in Washington, it's very, very difficult. When you say, have I made any progress, I would say some progress, but it's really, really slow. And there are certain people that are interested in this who I inform about things that go on. And one of the important components of that is the work of the Chilean government. But making progress in Washington is not an easy job. So I can't really, I don't know if I can describe it as progress except on a small scale, but you never know when a break will come. You never know when that moment will come where something can give. Right. And it's just a matter of, for the people involved who really do want to support this effort that I'm making, for them, they only can do what they can do given all the circumstances that they're involved with. And so it's really, so much of it is a matter of timing and the positioning of various people, and, it'll happen when it can happen, but there's so many factors that affect it.
Right.
So we just have to be very, very patient. But I can't emphasize enough, the more that people can learn about how agencies like the one in Chile operate, they really are unique in the world. I think the better informed we all are to hopefully have something like that happen here when the time is right for that.
Right. And, you being patient and thorough, I'm sure means a lot to the people that you're quietly dealing with. But what happens when something, fringy makes the news? We all know what happened recently, but how does that, how do these things do they set you back, or do you just immediately address it with the people involved that you're talking to and just say, this is, crazy. We understand, most of the people in this field are not thinking in this manner or something like that. Well, how do you address that? Or do you?
It really isn't necessary. It's just not necessary, Martin, because the people at the higher levels in Washington that are interested in this do not pay any attention to the kind of shenanigans that go on. It's not on the radar screen. And if it does come up as a little blip, they know. It's so obvious and so clear that it's not necessary for me to explain anything to them.
I see. Uh-huh. And what about other...
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it.
Uh-huh. Okay. Now, what about other governments?
Yeah.
No, do you want to elaborate more on that? That's fine.
No, I was just going to say, it's unfortunate when these things happen. I certainly don't think it's definitely an unfortunate thing. And, but I think that so much of what I'm doing is sort of outside of the whole realm of the ufology world, that whatever goes on in that sort of self-contained world I don't think is really significant for this bigger picture that I don't mean necessarily bigger, but it just doesn't impact the work that I do very much, if at all. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the more sophisticated people can see through it, that's the thing. The more sophisticated people who are outside of the UFO world and the ufology world can see right through it. So it just doesn't have much effect. I think it has much more of an effect within the self-contained world that ufologists have created for themselves than it does for those working outside of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You hear a lot of times you hear that we need to drain the swamp. You hear that saying a lot. But I just want to tell the listener out there, if you'd like to call in, you can call in and ask Leslie or Jose a question, and that phone number is 603-967-4030. We have a question up on the message board where someone wants to know, after you published your book, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record, have you gotten a lot of new stories from credible military personnel since that time?
Well, actually, the most important stories I've gotten are from Chile. So I've gotten some very interesting stories from Chile that I've actually published on the Huffington Post. So I would encourage that person to just go to the Huffington Post website and search my name, and you'll find those stories. And really, since the book came out, my main interest has been to observe and learn more about the work of the French agency and the Chilean agency, those two areas. And there have been some great cases that have come from those. I also want to mention to people that I'm not sure Jose Lay is going to be able to stay on too late tonight, so I'm hoping we can maybe turn the floor over to him a little bit more. Okay. I can always stay on later.
Okay, sure. So, Jose, have you, just throwing this question out of my hat here, have you, or your agency, I should say, worked with other government agencies or consulted with them about how to approach what you're doing?
Well, we basically based our ideas and principles in the French agency, JPON. And because they are the oldest agency, official government agency in the world, established a long time ago. They created a report called the Cometa Report, of which I think Leslie can talk about. And we started from there. We didn't intend to recreate the invention of the powder, the gunpowder. And we were based basically on them. And then we started to adapt their methods to our own idiosyncrasy here. That was it.
Mm-hmm. No
and
other.
Then since then, you've had a meeting with the French, though, right? Jose, you want to talk? That's a very historic event. You might want to mention that.
Oh yes, our director, General Bermudez, he was invited to the French agency, JPON, together with the civilian agency, or so to say, private French agency, which is the Sigma 3AF, that belongs to the private air and space industry in Europe or France. So that was really important, and we currently have relations with 14 countries. We also consult with the specialist, foreign specialists in some cases in which we have our doubts.
Now hold on, we have.
So it is with 14 countries we are cooperating with.
All right, hang on just a minute. We have
around the world.
Hang on, Jose. We have a caller just called in. Hold on, Jose. Caller, welcome.
Hello. This is Philip in Jackson, Mississippi. I have a question for Jose and Leslie. Over the years, I keep hearing that there's this huge group in China of organized, ufologists, or an organization, a huge organization in China that studies this phenomenon. What do we know about it? And does it really exist? And does any information come out of it? It seems like that large of a population. It makes sense that would be the case. But I just want to know if you guys have had any encounters or communications with that group. And thank you.
Leslie or Jose?
Yep.
Yes, I'm here.
Did you hear the caller?
I couldn't hear it.
Okay,
no
problem.
Anything.
I wondered if that might happen. That's kind of why I wanted to test this. The caller wanted to know if you, and thank you, caller. I'm going to let you go now. Thank you, Philip.
Okay.
And, let's see. The caller wanted to know if you've had any talks or anything with a Chinese group. It's supposed to be a very large UFO-involved group in China, and he was wondering, an association of some kind, if you've had any interaction at all with China.
Well, we do have interaction with China in an official manner through the Chinese military attaché in Santiago, in our country. We do not have any contact with how we say, civilian group in China at all. The problem is that we have to know the excuse me.
I'm sorry, everyone.
We have to know the background.
Go ahead.
I think we have to know first the background of the group, the members that there are in. For example, in the United States, we have contact with NARCAP. We also know very well Dr. Richard Haynes, and he has cooperated with us for a long time now, NARCAP. And it is difficult to contact Chinese civilian groups that are studying the subject because not of the language barrier. I know Chinese. The problem is that we don't know anything about them. And actually, with civilian groups, we do not have contact in China. We would love to, of course. But as you know, there are many so-called ufologist groups, and we are not interested in them at all, actually. Oh. As Leslie mentioned, their own world, we are outside of that circle.
Well, I have to ask you why you take that position.
Well, because to tell you the truth, we do not like speculation at all. We think if we did, we will go to integrate into a very mixed bag in which it is so polluted by I don't know. I don't know how to say it. I don't want to offend anyone. We prefer to keep it the way we are so far. We do not make great affirmation if we do not have great proofs.
Sure. I understand all that. I just wanted to hear what you had to say. Now, there's a message up on the message board asking if Chile thinks they are actually dealing with craft from off-world, and if so, how do they make the findings? I'm sorry, let me try to read that again. How do they make their findings public?
No, first of all, by law, we are required to give every information we receive. That is by law. And we do. And the French agency does the same. We see no reason whatsoever to hide anything. However, to speculate, that is another thing altogether. We cannot speculate on where it comes from or what the phenomenon is unless we have clear, universally accepted as true. Perhaps I'm not explaining myself well.
No.
But we can.
So I guess I'll rephrase the question in a little bit of a different way. Has there been any situation where CEFAA has just said, this has to be, or most likely, I guess it goes back to speculating. But like the French report, the Cometa report that initially got Leslie interested in this topic, one of the best theory that they had, hypothesis that they had of the situation is that it's an extraterrestrial situation, unless I'm quoting any of this wrong, Leslie. But
yeah, I mean, it was definitely an hypothesis, though. It was an hypothesis, nothing that was proven.
Right. Yes, they do take that as a hypothesis, and we do accept the hypothesis. We accept it. However, we cannot say this case or whatever it is exactly what people might think it is extraterrestrial without the necessary proof. We have been puzzled several times, very much puzzled, like in this Aga case. Mm-hmm. However, we cannot prove it, and therefore we are not going to say this was indeed extraterrestrial. I don't know. I'm not sure whether our listener will understand that.
No, I think they will. Now, I'm going to go on a wild topic, but semi-related or associated, I should say. Has this agency ever looked into people's claims of abduction? Don't get mad at me, Leslie, for asking.
I think Leslie is a person more indicated than me.
No, I mean, I don't even know if Jose even knows what that means. So the answer is a big no.
Okay.
He probably doesn't even hardly know what you mean by that.
Okay.
It's a big area of research in this country, but they're not associated with that at all.
Ah, that's what I wanted to know. And what about?
But I mean, maybe Jose wants to speak for himself, but.
Jose?
I think, forgive my interruption, I think you mean abduction in the sense that an extraterrestrial being or beings have kidnapped an earthling or something like that?
Right.
Does that? Well, we cannot say anything about it. First of all, because our mission is to study the phenomenon, not the only the nature of it. However, since we are not able to prove the existence, of the nature of the phenomenon being extraterrestrial, we could hardly believe in any case of abduction at all, because first we have to learn about the nature of the phenomenon itself.
Right. Okay, so let me ask you this question as well, while we're on a similar topic, or has the Chilean government ever looked into some of the major cases that have happened, reported that have happened in different countries? Or do they?
No, our mission is.
And the reason I'm asking,
we have to.
Go ahead.
We have to stick, for obvious reason, either economic or by the amount of information we have here nationally, only to within our borders.
Okay. Hang on just a minute here. I have to make an adjustment here. It's going to make some noise. Hang on. Okay, go ahead and talk if you would.
Well, our mission is to study the phenomenon that are reported by our pilots, either civilian or military. That is our scope. However, the people keep sending their own cases to us, of course, to our office, because after we were created, the so-called ufologists started slowly but surely disappearing from the map. The thing is that people at large, they finally know that they get nowhere with wild theories or things like that. And they no longer go over to some ufologists to let them know their experiences or show them their photograph, etc., etc. And the only thing they accomplish is to blow up the name of the so-called ufologist to start profiting by it. You see?
Uh-huh.
They finally found out that is the truth about the so-called ufologist, well-known ufologist, or not very well known. Before, I can tell you, in this country we have a big amount of them going in television, being interviewed in the press and all that, but no longer is the case.
Because of the government, because of this agency. So the question I had, and the reason I had the question was, like, for instance, you hear a lot of things happening in Brazil, which is a neighboring country, and I've just wondered if you.
Yes.
It seems to me that you could be teachable by certain things that happen, or you could learn something, and I just wondered if you ever pay attention to what's happening in neighboring countries.
Well, first of all, we do have relations, official relations, with several countries in South America, Uruguay, Brazil, Peru, their own Argentina. Their commander-in-chief of the Air Force have been visiting the CEFAA, who inspired the Peruvian agency and the Argentinian agency to the extent that the Argentinian agency put a name. It's called CEFAA, without our last A. You see, mm-hmm. And we know about the Brazilian cases, of course, but they came mainly from the special division they have within the Air Force that is in charge of registering all those cases that can actually gather the largest amount of information possible, like radar reports or sighting reports by their own pilots. We know all about the Operación Prato, for example, which is a very dramatic sighting made by the Brazilian Air Force, as dramatic as the Belgian Air Force report.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we are familiar with some of their cases.
Yes. Now, there's a message up on the message board that I'll ask you in just a second, but so I'm going to ask you this little bit of a fringy question, and that is, has anyone ever reported that you're aware of that they saw any type of beings in these crafts or on these crafts or on the ground? Has beings ever come into any of the reports that you have looked at seriously?
No.
All right, well, that was a quick answer. Okay. So, Jose, we have a few minutes left here for the first hour, and then we take a real quick music break and jump into the second hour. So the question to you is, do you want to hang out for the second hour of the show, or a little bit of it? Or are you?
I would like to, Martin, because it is a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah. And just to let the listener know, poor Jose has been very sick, and he still wanted to go through with the show tonight. So you'll have to apologize him for giving a cough here and there. Okay, up on the message board, Shane wants to know, what are your group's findings in general at this point? And I don't know if I should word that better for you, Jose. Let's just say, what is the overall findings of the group since this has been taken seriously?
I don't think I really understand very well the question.
Sure. Leslie, can you think of a way to ask him that?
Yeah. I mean, they just want to know, Jose, what is the sort of conclusion or the position that the CEFAA has regarding the phenomenon
No.
As a result of all the work that you've done, what is your sort of position on the issue?
Well, our conclusion, yes, we have concluded, first of all, the phenomenon exists. That is for sure. If we are to trust all the many reports of very responsible people, reliable people, such as many civilian commercial pilots and military pilots, it is impossible to discredit them all. So the phenomenon definitely exists, and that drew the attention of our scientists. It is a phenomenon that has not been explained so far. That means a challenge to our men of science, men and women of science. That is a challenge. But the existence of it is undeniable. That is the conclusion we have reached so far. And that is why we exist, in order to find out, by all the means we have, we are a very small country, remember? Mm-hmm. To find out the truth. What is it exactly? Right. And let it known to the public.
That would
be my answer.
I was in it. Thank you for that. I was in an office yesterday, and there was this older gentleman that was in marketing and like a Harvard graduate type of gentleman, and I said, "Oh, I have to do a recording on a show." I was recording with Alejandro Rojas for his show, and so he asked me, "Well, what do you do the show on?" And I said UFOs, and he looked at me with this look like I was out of my mind. And so I just looked at him and I said, something is happening, and I'm not going to say that I know what is happening, but it's a curious situation and something to look into. And, that's kind of my answer to someone that wants to think this is a total fringe thing, that something is definitely happening, because all of these people cannot be seeing something that is not existing. It's just an impossibility.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I fully agree with that.
Yep. So we're ready to take a break right here real quickly. And that's it for Hour 1. If you'd like to listen to Hour 2, all you have to do is subscribe, and our information is right on podcastufo.com, right on the sidebar. And it could be as low as only $1 per month, which is 23 cents a week. And I want to thank everyone for helping out with the show. Alejandro Rojas with the news, Peggy Shunning for managing the Facebook page, Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse, and Bruce Rainier for the music. And we'll be back right here on the Dark Matter Radio Network, where you can always listen to the full show for free. And thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back next week. Remember, keep your eyes to the sky.